What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Mamaverse podcast, where we bring experts in physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual wellness to talk about how moms can improve their overall health in their daily life. I'm your host, Tu-Hien Lee, and our guest today is Courtney McManus. Courtney is a movement specialist who helps busy moms move more while focusing on posture and breathing to help ease anxiety. Welcome, Courtney. How are you?
Hello. Good. How are you? Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for joining us on the Mamaverse podcast. So, Courtney, would you like to do give us a background about yourself and what inspired you to get into physical wellness?
Okay. So I was a teacher before I went into the health and wellness industry. And I was pregnant with my son and knew I wanted to be my first son, I should say. And I knew I wanted to be at home with him doing something, but needed to continue to help provide for some financial support as well in our household. So I ended up kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I was actually at the same time looking for a group to go for walks with my son and maybe do jogging or something. I wanted to do something active and I couldn't find anything in my local community. And I ended up going on this one running club. And this was many years ago. And there was this side advertisement about Stroller fitness franchising. And I just happened to look at it. It sounded really interesting. And I applied to be a franchise owner. And that is what led me into becoming a personal trainer. So I have been a personal trainer 16 years now and worked with women in Stroller Fitness for the first 10 years, continue to do that today. But as I was working with women, I started noticing that they were dealing with the same types of aches and pains. We had wrist issues. We had low back pain. We had foot pain. We had this belly pooching that was occurring. And I wanted to dive deeper into that. And I started learning about corrective exercise, also started learning about how much posture and breathing plays a role in all of that. And that's kind of what led me here, where I now own my own business in corrective exercise, working with women to help them move more, and then also focusing on posture and breathing to help with that belly pooch. And like you said, ease anxiety and tension because it's all interconnected.
Okay, let's dive into those topics.
Okay.
Because I know that one of the areas that you focus on is in the mom posture. Mm-hmm. So can you tell us more about that?
Okay. So mom posture is one of those things. If you ever go to a park and you watch women stand around, you will see exactly what this is. This is kind of the hips jut forward a little bit. You've got this rounded shoulders. And this is just that park posture that we think of. Or you also have the mom who always has the child on the hip. So their hip is sticking out, and you'll even see them standing like this when they don't have their child on the hip. So they've got the hip, their rib cage is shifted to one side, child's on the hip, and then the foot is turned out as well. So these are all common things that occur with this mom posture. And usually what starts to happen is they get into this ritual, like I had said, with even if they're not holding that child or anything, these postures continue with them over time and then can create other problems. The low belly pooch. This is where those moms who have that rounded shoulder, if you pay attention to what's happening to your ribs when you're in this rounded position, usually those ribs are kind of gripping down. And if you look down, you'll see that you've got this low belly pooch. Well, this is pressure pushing down and creating that belly pooch. So that is common. Honestly, that is even common for all of us nowadays.
I feel like you're talking to me here.
Yeah. Yeah. So what has happened is many of us, as we have become more sedentary, a lot of sitting, we go into this natural state because that's how our couches and chairs are kind of created to kind of let us sit down and relax, and our muscles aren't having to do any of the work anymore. And it creates this rounded forward posture. And then we look down and you can see this belly pooch. And this is where the ribs have kind of slid back, where they're more sitting back with the pelvis rather than forward. And it's hard to explain this without being able to see it, but this moving forward with your posture. So what I usually recommend people do is, if you think about lengthening through your back, pretend someone has a string along your spine, and then at the back of the head, pretend someone's lengthening you up, and then you'll feel where the ribs should naturally go over the pelvis. That's kind of like your guide to know where it should sit over the pelvis.
Mm-hmm.
And that, when you do that, it's an immediate, like, I don't want to say tummy tuck, but that, like, it's an immediately different look. You can change the look of your belly pooch just by that one move.
So you kind of mentioned a bit earlier that the reason why women start to kind of stand like this is because they're holding baby or older child. And then it's just that their body gets used to that. So then when they're holding their baby or toddler or maybe older child, is there a better way to stand and do this?
So the biggest thing is just to think about movement throughout positions. So we are creatures of habit and comfort. So we will always, and I myself did this, I had 3 children, and every single one of them I held on my left hip. Always.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And what happens is, if you think about that movement, what do you naturally do when you do that? You shift your ribs to the right. So then you might create some tension in your back. You might create some gripping with a rib. So a rib might tend to pull in one side more than the other. And you could see how this might affect that chain up the line or down the line, because we're all interconnected. So things to think about. Try not to get into that habit of doing just one side. Think about holding your children in the front. Try to hold them on the other side. This goes with purses and any type of thing that you might, diaper bags, any of that as well. Try to change the side. Have you ever noticed when you put one on, if you don't put it on the side that you're normally putting it on, it like slides right off? So that's another thing, is trying to vary how you hold your children, vary how you stand. If you always notice your left foot turns out, try to stand and change to the right foot. Sitting, change up your position of sitting. So a lot of times we'll just sit back, relax, and our legs are out in front of us, but maybe bring one leg in, where it's, kind of underneath you, where the foot's, I'm looking down at myself here. My foot is kind of at my inner thigh and my knee is out to the side. And then I'll switch it and try to do the other side as well, so that I'm trying to create one more movement. So I'm not stuck in one position for long periods of time. And then also noticing, if I'm always coming to this side because it feels more comfortable, I need to work the other side, because we always want to go where we're least comfortable. Like, it's just like with fitness. If it's something you don't enjoy doing, it's probably where you need to spend more time doing it, because that's where you need it more than what you enjoy doing.
Okay. So would you say that's kind of the solution for the belly pooch too? It's just mostly posture, or is there something else?
So there are layers to what needs to occur. I usually start with breathing and posture. Everybody wants to start with the core exercises, But if your breathing and posture is not proper while you're doing those exercises, then you're doing yourself a disservice, because you're not going to be, you could be creating more pressure, more postural issues by doing those core exercises. So breathing is the first thing that I focus on. And breathing is, if you think about taking a deep breath, and this is always something I work with women on, or moms, if you take a deep breath, where do you feel that breath go? And a lot of us feel that breath go up. So our shoulders rise up. And what's happening is when we take a deep breath in and our shoulders rise up, when we breathe out, that pressure then goes down, because it goes up and then goes down. What should be occurring when we're breathing is we should be breathing down, so that when we breathe out, pressure goes back up. So we are going backwards with our breathing pattern, and we need to work on bringing that breath in more down. And when I say down, a lot of people immediately think, oh, so I should be working into belly breathing. Not exactly.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, so not exactly, because if you deal with diastasis recti, this is going to put a lot of pressure on that front wall of the abdominal wall.
Can you explain what diastasis recti is to those who may not?
Yes, sorry. So this is also known as split abs. It can sometimes create that low belly pooch look. And that is where, so you have rectus abdominis muscles. So if you think of those 6-pack abs, they should, well, I don't want to say they should, but they run straight down the line. As they start to separate, which is normal with pregnancy, as they start to separate, if they, after pregnancy, if they don't go back in, which they will have a little bit of separation, but if they don't go back in together or closer together, that could be where you have diastasis recti. Now, there are a lot of things involved with that. So you could have where it does close up, but then you can still stick your fingers deep within. And that would have to do with your fascial line. So I don't want to get into it too much, but it's where the abs split, and it's very natural. It's very common. I usually recommend just going easy as you get back into after having a baby, because you could have diastasis up to 6 weeks later, which is normal. And then it may heal itself on its own based on how you breathe and your posture. It may not as well. So it kind of depends with that. But if you have diastasis recti, then you don't want to be focusing on belly breathing, because that could be putting tension up against that wall. What I recommend is 360 breathing. So if you think of a jellyfish and how it moves, that all of its, moving in that 360 pattern, that is what you want your ribs doing. So you want to think of your ribs expanding front, sides, and back normally. When I have women practice this, the hardest thing to do is the back. So you're leaning up against your chair right now. I want you to take a deep breath in, thinking about the breath dropping down into that core, the cavity, and think about expanding those ribs, trying to get those back ribs to press into the chair. And that will tend to, you might notice that you feel a little bit like, that was like a little stretch for my back. You may notice that. Some people don't, but yeah. So that is getting into that more full, deeper breathing. And when we do that, that tends to put some pressure down on the pelvic floor, which is natural. And then as you breathe out, then the pelvic floor lifts naturally as well, which is what it's supposed to do.
What's the purpose of doing that type of breathing versus what we would normally breathing with, like in our chest, like versus?
So there's a ton of things. So when you breathe through your chest, you're using your accessory muscles. So you're not using your diaphragm. Your diaphragm is what is the muscle that is supposed to be working within your core for breathing. If you use your accessory muscles, so the neck, upper back, upper chest muscles, you are creating this, it's paradoxical breathing. So the diaphragm's not working properly. The lungs don't get full expansion. So there could be some lack of mobility within the lungs themselves. There is some other neat things that occur. There's a lot of different things that can be occurring. One, you'll deal with a lot more neck tension, upper back tension. You may deal with more anxiety when you breathe this pattern because our diaphragm runs along with, our vagus nerve runs along where the diaphragm is. And the diaphragm, if you're breathing properly, it's gently massaging that vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is that parasympathetic sympathetic state. So if it's not going through if the diaphragm's not going through its full movement pattern, it could be creating this fight or flight response in the body. So that would be anxiety. There's acid reflux that occurs with this as well, because the diaphragm's not moving through the full range. There's some links to sleep apnea as well, because you're not getting that full range of the breathing. There's a lot of things that kind of lead into this: pelvic floor prolapse, incontinence, a lot.
Wow.
I could probably go on, but it's very important to start working into breathing more naturally, which unfortunately is not what's considered natural anymore, just because of the lack of movement in our society.
Oh, I see. You think it's just because of us sitting in our sedentary state, which is we learn to breathe like unnaturally?
Yes, because the more we move, the more we get our posture. You're moving your body through different positions. The more we sit, we get stuck in the same position. If you think about how you sit at a table, how you sit at a desk, how you sit in your chair, they are all very similar. So that sedentary lifestyle, you wake up in the morning, you go sit to eat breakfast. Then you go sit in your car to drive to work. You sit at a desk for 8 hours. You sit for lunch. You sit for dinner. You sit in your car to go back home. You sit for dinner. You sit to watch TV. And then you may get 30 minutes or an hour long exercise in there, but that's a lot up against a lot of sitting time.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Wow. All the things that you talked about, like neck, shoulder tension, back pains. I'm like, oh my God, you're just like talking about me. Mm-hmm. So I'm guessing, I think a lot of women, a lot of moms experience very similar pains. Mm-hmm. For me, it's like, my back hurts a lot. Mm-hmm. And I tell my husband I can't wash dishes because my back hurts all the time, but I don't know. It doesn't always work for me, but, so a lot of it can be, so that's like a good starting point is with breathing. Mm-hmm. And then I'm guessing the second one would be just movement in general.
Movement in general, trying to move through different positions. So even like this whole standing desk, even if you have some way to move through different positions, if you are at a desk all day, just kind of working on standing up. Does that mean 8 hours of standing is good for you? No. So we need to be varying. We need to stand up a little bit. We need to sit down a little bit, change the position when you're sitting. Just looking at, I like to get people as well down onto the floor to where they sit on the floor a little bit more, because when we sit in a chair, we're kind of in this 90-degree position. And the more we can get down to the floor, it changes the position of our hips. So if you deal with a lot of tension in your hips, a lot of low back pain, then you should be sitting on the floor more. And again, moving through different positions, feet out in front, feet out to the side like straddle, feet 90-90. Legs, in a 90-90 position, legs in another opposite 90-90. Just kind of moving through different positions on the floor will help work on creating more mobility in the hips. But posture, if you want me to kind of take you through a quick line of postural type things, I can do that as well.
Yeah. Yes, okay, definitely.
So if we start at our head, so we'll start up top at our head. First thing Our tongue also affects our line because we have a fascial line that goes from the tongue all the way down to the big toe. So we want to make sure that we are keeping that deep core line active. So the first thing is make sure your tongue is sitting on the roof of your mouth rather than pressing onto the teeth. And for many, this is normal, but there are some people with smaller mouths, any type of, there's a lot of people out there who push their tongue up against the back of their teeth. So that would be the first thing. Then I usually recommend people drop their chin just slightly. You don't want to go too far. So you just to where you start to get that double chin, and think about someone lengthening through the spine, or a string being pulled to lengthen you through the spine. So that's the first thing. You want to think about your ears kind of stacking up over your shoulders, so you're not in this forward position. And then we want to think about, again, lengthening through our back and our core at the same time. And then our pelvis, you should be able to rock it forward and back. And you want to just find what feels the middle for you. Because some of us vary. Some of us fall forward more. Some of us fall backwards more. So we need to find that happy medium. You can take your hands and place them in a triangle with your fingertips down at your pubic bone and your thumbs at your low belly. And they should be stacked right up on top of each other. So if I look down, they should be like this. You should be able to see your thumbs and then your fingertips right underneath. If your fingertips are out here in front, then you have a posterior pelvic tilt. If you see your thumbs but can't see your fingertips, you have a sway back or an anterior pelvic tilt. The goal is to get it to come right to the middle. But in saying that, I do want to let you know that I would rather you move through different positions than to feel like you have to sit here like this, because this is really awkward as well. We don't want to be stuck in this position all day long. You're going to deal with tension again in places. Hip flexors will get really tight, things like that. So it's more important to keep moving through different positions to help.
So when we're sitting, is this how you suggest that we sit?
I would say the biggest thing is to think about lengthening through that back so that when you're looking down, you're not pressing down.
Like if I was like hunched over like that,
yes,
then I'm pressing down. Okay.
Because then you feel how the belly, because there's nowhere and your torso. So, people will say, I've got such a small torso, but a lot of it just has to do with your posture. If you're crunched down in this position, there is a lack of torso. So you got to work on lengthening through that midsection to help. And the knees are soft. So I would then go to the knees. The knees are soft. A lot of us tend to, that mom posture, they lock their knees out, which can create some problems with the knees, some stress on the knees, kneecap itself. So soft knees, but not bent. When I say soften the knees, people like bend their knees and stand really awkward. But learning the difference between the two. And I have exercises that I have that help people kind of to guide them to understand what they need to do with that. And then try to work on keeping the toes facing forward, not this duck stand position that a lot of us go into, this toes turned out, or like a ballet dancer or military, anything like that. So trying to keep those toes facing forward as well.
Okay. This is really helpful. Now I'm sitting here like trying to think about being more intentional about how I'm sitting and like aware of my body. And I know moms, busy moms, these are just like simple things that we can just start to think about as we try to, fix our posture just for overall better health, seems right.
Yeah.
And it impacts everything.
Yes. And I would say, honestly, for moms of toddlers, that is when you have to usually worry about this the least, because they are moving so much. You are now moving a lot. So it's more those breastfeeding years. And then once your kids get old enough to where you're not doing everything for them, with older children. But obviously, if you're dealing with these minor nagging aches and pains, then I would start looking at your posture and what you're doing in your everyday life.
I love this. Well, this was very, very helpful. Courtney, this was such a fun and educational conversation.
Thank you.
Where can our audience find you, connect with you, and work with you?
So I am on all the platforms. Sorry. Do you want me to? I am on all the platforms. You can find me on Instagram. It's Courtney_FormFit. You can find me on Facebook under FormFit. And then I have a podcast, Raising Healthy Humans. And each week I interview someone. And then I also go every Thursday, I do a movement snack. Some have to do with posture. Some have to do with just trying to find ways to create more movement into your everyday life. And that's every Thursday. And I mean, I'm on TikTok. I'm on.
You're everywhere.
Yes, I am.
So I will link everything in the show notes,
Okay.
your Instagram, your website. So I encourage everybody to go follow and connect with Courtney, learn more about mom posture, and how to improve that for, overall better, improved wellness. So thank you again, Courtney, for joining us today on the Mamaverse. And thank you everybody for tuning in, and we will see you on the next episode.